And peace to you from the God who meets us in ordinary places with extraordinary grace. So we are in a second week of our short series, Be Our Guests. And we're thinking about the empty seat and who in our lives are waiting for an invitation to be in that seat. And so last week you were sent home with an assignment. Think of 5 names, and yes, you will be sent home with an assignment again today as well. But before we get to that assignment, let us think about this message that we've heard from the Gospel of John today. And it's a story we may have heard a few times, the story of the Samaritan woman. And so I want you to think about this woman who meets Jesus in the midst of her daily chores. And have you ever found yourself uttering the phrase, I don't even know what I need, I just know something's not quite right? It's this subtle yet pervasive feeling. Maybe it's a sudden shift in circumstances, a fracture in a relationship that you thought was unshakable. Or maybe it's an indescribable emptiness or an inexplicable stirring deep within your soul. In today's gospel story or lesson from John, we encounter someone who is experiencing precisely this. A woman at a well at the well during the oppressive heat of the midday. And she was alone. And now we think of this story and we think, why midday and why alone, in this heat when we're going to get water? Well, perhaps this Samaritan woman was deliberately avoiding the morning and the evening gatherings at the well. Perhaps she lived at the margins of her community, not by her own choosing, but by the world around her that had rejected her. Maybe she had been pushed aside, her dignity dismissed, her humanity diminished. Yet in her quiet resilience, she still came to the well, drawing water, tending to a very daily task of life. She was resilient to keep coming to the well, even amidst cultural and relational exclusion. But as the story is told over and over again, and we see it in our own lives, enter Jesus, right? He's weary from traveling. He's thirsty. He's sitting at the well. Now, this is not a grand ceremony or being at the temple grandeur. No, it's just a moment of divine interruption in the most mundane of settings. And Jesus initiates this conversation that is life-changing for this woman with a very simple but radical request. Will you give me a drink? In a single sentence, Jesus transcends not only cultural and religious, but gender barriers as well. His question isn't merely about quenching his physical thirst. It's an opening to a conversation that goes much deeper. And then comes his mysterious offer of living water. And coming to the well at noon, she's thinking, yeah, give me this water so I'll never have to come here again, right? But she misunderstands. Jesus isn't offering this mere hydration of H2O. No, he is offering restoration, renewal, and dignity. Jesus sees beyond the labels that society has given her. He sees her fully, not as an outcast, but one worthy of divine conversation. And now here's where I pause the story of the woman at the well because it echoes so powerfully with my own journey. And I wanted to share a piece of that with you. As I stated earlier, we have reached the 1-year mark of our 2-year internship together. And as I begin this second and final year of my seminary journey, I come to this common question and common source of conversation of what comes next, right? And that means answering a lot of questions about call stories, or how did you know, right? When did it start? What did God use to draw you in? And so today, I'm highlighting one small but very meaningful moment from my call story. When I first joined the Lutheran church, it was because my daughter attended a vacation Bible school. And so I wanted to help participate with teaching Sunday school. And so we joined the church as official members. And I remember eagerly filling out that time and talent sheet, right? Where you check off the things that you can do and maybe things that you want to learn about. And I checked off that time and talent sheet. I turned it into the pastor, and then I just waited. Weeks passed, then months, and nothing. I was ready, but I was kind of uncertain, a little hopeful, but hesitant. And I just kept waiting. And finally, my phone rang. And on the other end of the line was someone I kind of recognized from our church, but she had stated she's on the education committee and asking if I would be available for 4 days for a week in the summer to lead crafts for Vacation Bible School. A small request, probably something mundane, right? And for some, it would be, wait, I have to teach crafts to preschoolers through 5th graders, like 100 of them? Like, most people would say, no, thank you, right? But for me, this ask was profound. Someone had noticed me. Someone on the education committee, where they had probably sat around, and you know how committees work. You sit around, you talk about who can we get to rope in and tie down and get here today. And names start flying, and then phone calls are made, and I was just waiting for this phone call. But somebody had saw me in my natural habitat of chaos and children. At this point in my life, I was a stay-at-home mom to 4 children, all of them 4th grade and younger. The youngest maybe about 2, if not that, very close to it. I was doing the things like Cub Scout leader and Girl Scout leader. I was on the Early Childhood Advisory Council. But someone at the church on that education committee mentioned my name. Then the call was made. And because my natural habitat of glitter glue and googly eyes and children and chaos was something that was recognized as needed in our life as a church together, they made a literal phone call extending a very specific invitation that became one of the very important parts of my call story. So along with glue sticks and sequins and God's exquisite timing, my vocation began unfolding. And now I want to be very clear. Not every phone call made to a stay-at-home mom is going to end up in a seminarian. But it is going to end up with somebody coming to church who feels that they are needed and wanted and invited. And so back to John's gospel. The Samaritan woman, she experienced a very similar transformative moment. After encountering Jesus, she abandons her water jar. The very reason she came to the well, she leaves behind and she rushes back to her town with her message that is astonishing. She says to the people in her village, "Come and see a man who told me everything I have ever done. This is the Messiah." She did not wake up that day thinking she was going to the well to meet a Jewish man who would dare to talk to a Samaritan woman and meet the Messiah and have her life change in that instant, becoming one of the most well-known evangelists of her time. Just like I did not wake up that morning with a phone call from a committee asking me to play with children and crafts and end up as a seminarian in front of you here today. But that invitation can make a big difference. So imagine that. Her testimony, it isn't about miracles or wealth. It's about Jesus fully seeing her in her element and fully loving her. So this week, with our 5 that we are going to think about and invite, we think about deeper invitation, not just to make a list, but to open our eyes and our hearts to sacred stories that are unfolding around us at all times. And it's not about recruitment, it's about relationship. It's about living attentively in this world where so many are carrying invisible burdens, and where we can dare to believe that a simple invitation offered with love might be the very thing someone needs to encounter the living Christ. So who in your life might be quietly carrying heavy burdens? Who might be standing metaphorically alone at that well? Who is lingering just outside the circle, waiting for someone to notice? Who do you know whose life reflects one of the critical signs, and I'm going to talk about 5 of them, that you can maybe notice around you? Maybe we notice someone who has something in their life that is changing. Maybe a new chapter is beginning. Perhaps something unplanned or unsettling is happening, but there is a change. Maybe you notice someone who has something in their life that is breaking. A health diagnosis, a strained relationship, an unforeseen crisis. You know someone in your life who has something that is breaking. Think of someone who perhaps has something that is missing, perhaps a void of purpose, or maybe they are yearning for deeper connections. You know someone who has something that is missing. Think of someone who has something in their lives that is stirring. Maybe they are in a little bit of time where they are curious about joining the church, or maybe they are open to something new in their lives, where something in their lives is stirring. And perhaps you know someone who is in a season of their lives where something is enduring. Maybe they are waiting on a phone call. Maybe they have a chronic health challenge, or they are someone who could just use a companion. These are 5 things that you can think about this week. Who are those friends that used to come to church but maybe drifted away? Or perhaps you have a neighbor that just moved in. Or you have a young adult in your life that is still trying to figure things out. Or perhaps the widower whose world has gotten too quiet. Or that parent whose busy life is stretched thin. or that teenager who keeps their mouth shut and their eyes down, hoping no one will notice. It's someone in your life, the grocery clerk, the cashier, the coach, the caregiver, someone. And again, we invite you to do homework this week. Write their names. Pray for them. And then extend the invitation. Invite them to coffee. Invite them to dinner. Invite them to worship. Invite them to wonder and to walk alongside you. Invite them to glitter glue and googly eyes. Invite them to be seen and known and loved by Jesus. Because sometimes it takes an invitation to change someone's life. Someone to say, come and see. And as those who have come and seen Jesus, we are invited into this particular task of followers, and it's not to passively wait. It's to be like Jesus, to notice someone, to approach, to invite. We extend those invitations to others because Christ first invited us. Jesus steps into our very ordinary, messy, complicated reality of our lives and sees us fully, and still loves us. And we know this because Jesus came not to establish those exclusive circles and cliques, to reward impeccable lives. No, Jesus came to heal and to redeem and to restore. He challenged oppressive systems that marginalize. He confronted injustices. And most of all, he loved relentlessly. He loved so relentlessly that he was betrayed, arrested, condemned, and crucified. But even death could not silence his invitation of love. We know the story, right? On the third day, he rose, breaking every barrier between us and the heart of God. And that is the gospel, my friends. The profound truth that empowers us to extend loving invitations. So this week, notice who is weary. Notice who is lonely. Pay attention to who is silently breaking. And bravely extend that invitation. Come and see. Because the well of God's grace and love runs deep. The water is living, and the invitation is endlessly open. Amen.